Hello, Voices of Wrestling listener. Dave Ryan here. Have you ever wondered to yourself how many hidden gems are hidden away inside the last years of World Championship Wrestling? Have you ever asked yourself how many tenuous gags can be made about the name Mike Enos? And have you ever thought about what it sounds like for two Irishmen to interpret a very chaotic company through its B show? The answers to all this and more are just a click away. Check out Days of Thunder every second Thursday on the Voices of Wrestling podcast network.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome back to another episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee here on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. My name is Tyler Fornes. With me, as always, is Fred. I would also hurt myself jumping off that ramp, Moreland. Fred, I'm glad you're not in the emergency room getting your foot looked at, but how are you otherwise?
I'm doing all right. As a unathletic middle-aged guy, that probably would take me out. I don't know that it's really to Adam Cole's benefit that I'm making that comparison, but because he doesn't really qualify for at least the unathletic part, and I don't think
he plays as much video games to match us, so that's at least the benefit.
That is very true. But yeah, it's been an interesting week in the world of wrestling. Some sad news for a few wrestlers losing their jobs with WWE, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I guess we could just go ahead and start with that because there's some wrestling business about.
Yes, there is, and we'll kind of start in because like WWE business, not necessarily WWE creative or what they do for their shows. It matters when it comes to AEW because what they do for business kind of sets the tone for what AEW can or will do. And Fox signed a new deal for SmackDown, moving SmackDown off of Fox back to USA for $1.4 billion over 5 years. Now, 4 years ago, they signed a deal with Fox for SmackDown, and they got $1 billion over 5 years. So they're going from network television to cable and getting a 40% raise, which will be $280 million per year for the rights. Fred, this is a very interesting one because they're moving it off of network television and still getting a significant raise, which will be hilarious when the ratings go down upwards of 30-40% on a regular basis because it's not on network television.
Yeah, that's the numbers are definitely going to fall once that transition happens, just because, as you said, cable numbers are not on the same wavelength as network numbers, and that's just going to show up in the ratings. But I mean, it's not a fair comparison. Like, no one should really be making straight up network to cable rating comparisons in general. So it's very interesting because I saw some speculation that this would put USA out of the running for when Raw and NXT come up for renewal. But at the same time, other people I saw were like, they're still very much interested in it. It kind of begs the question, why didn't they just buy WWE when they could? But I'm not a guy that runs a $1 billion company, and obviously they're just so much smarter than us because they have money. I think that's how that works. Please don't investigate this statement at all.
So I will say, if you can make money off
dumb.
of that, well, maybe they just didn't want to run a wrestling company.
I mean, that's fair, but like when that's like a third of your business. I mean, I'm being over the top there, but still, when it's like a ridiculous part of your business, maybe just swallow the pill, buddy. I don't know.
Yeah, And I don't blame them for not wanting to get involved with Vince McMahon.
You
Considering
could have just
where,
kicked him out, but yeah.
yeah, well, considering where things were at with Vince and all of that. But sometimes just paying for it and making a little bit of money off the top just makes inherently more sense than buying it and running it yourself. And you having to deal with all the overhead, you having to deal with all the back end stuff, as my dogs are fighting literally right by my feet. I get it, but at the same time, you're 100% right. Where they would be able to make hand over fist, where a $1.4 billion rights fee over 5 years, and then you change it to being free because you don't have to pay somebody to put it on your airwaves.
Yeah,
that changes everything.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And WWE sold for $9.3 billion. So, which was, I think, a stock exchange and not outright, money transfer, obviously. But still, you'd think that NBC, would have been a little more forward thinking. But again, they just, I guess, looked at it differently. I do have more faith in them than David Zaslav, but I can't say anything bad about David Zaslav, or else AEW might go away, and then I don't think that'll happen either.
I think they're at a point, and especially where we're at with live sports, where they would get picked up by somebody else, and I don't think AEW would cease to exist. I don't think.
No, I think they get picked up elsewhere.
Yeah, I think Impact, once they left Spike, they kind of went on that weird run, Pop TV, Destination America. I think that we're in a better headspace than that for AEW if they were to leave Turner. But yeah, it definitely would be semi-alarming if they left Turner, considering all the corporate synergy that we've seen over the past few years.
And there's, I don't think there's any specific information linking to this, but there is speculation that would Turner be interested in Raw and NXT. So I don't know. It's just very much a space to watch. If Turner does make that move, that could actually hurt AEW. You'd have to think that might be on the mind of TKO management, but I guess we'll see. There's just a lot of speculation there. And then we had the natural part of a American corporate merger in the 21st century, immediate layoffs, and excluding all the office staff that no one knows, as far as like a fan, for the most part.
And the office staff, it's basically this simple. You have Company A and Company B. Company A is absorbing Company B. Mm-hmm. Why would they need 2 accounting departments, 2 marketing departments? You're going to keep some of those people, but you're not keeping everybody. And that just happens. Sometimes it takes longer. Like, I was a part of a corporate merger at Buffalo Wild Wings, and corporate was actually in Minnesota. It was like 10 to 12 minutes away from my store. So we were well versed with people at corporate, and it took them 10 months to fully transition all the way down to Atlanta, where the new corporate office was. And sometimes some people get laid off right away. Some people are kept for a long time. Most people were offered a job if they were to go down to Atlanta. Most people didn't want to do that, so they just ended up taking their severance and going.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy.
As we have dog chaos. But yeah, it's but the on-screen releases, in rough order of biggest name to smallest, I guess, we had Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, Shelton Benjamin, Riddick Moss, Emma, Elias, Rick Boogs, Aaliyah, Top Dollar, Dana Brooke, Mace Mansoor, Ikemen Jiro, Shanky Dabakato, Ulisa Leon, and Kinsey Elliott all get released, and then there are a few other NXT names that didn't really ever make TV.
Wait, Jiro actually got cut? I didn't see that.
Announced that this morning, I do believe.
Oh man, but RIP to the Emerald Flow Show for having to watch him again.
I watched him in 3 or 4 matches before he made the jump to WWE, and I liked him back then. So,
yeah, but
I'm sure he'll go to Kyosho Pro or something, wherever Tajiri is.
If I recall correctly, it wasn't so much the in-ring work; it was the shtick. It just got old.
Yeah, I could see that, because it does seem like he was doing the shtick for probably a decade or something, just off what I've read. So, But yeah, so of those names, Tyler, who would you pick up if you were given the ability to do that for WWE?
I think there's two people. And one, I want to congratulate Aaliyah for somehow making it through all those initial roster cuts. And it took endeavor to finally get rid of her from the roster. She was there forever and she never did anything, at least outwardly to us. So good for her for sticking around for so long. But there are two people. Mustafa Ali, everybody knows how much Bryan Danielson loves him, wanted to put him over.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to get the run that Kofi Kingston got. But Kofi Mania started when Mustafa Ali was hurt and couldn't do Elimination Chamber. And they got the wonderful moment at WrestleMania. The other one is Dolph Ziggler. I don't know if he's going to necessarily ever be worth the money you'd have to pay to get him. But you could have the tag team with his brother Nick. Ryan. He's Nick. I think that Dolph would have something to offer in a limited capacity. The dude can go, and they strapped him up in WWE, but a concussion, and they just never went back to him. And they just kept beating him like a drum and ignoring him for like years. I think that there's something with Dolph. I personally don't care either way if he comes in. I think Mustafa should have left like 5 years ago and went on the indies, and then he would probably already been in this company. But I think that you could do something with him. The tough part is, with the type of wrestler he is, you already have a bunch of young guys on the roster that are the high flyers. Mm-hmm. So where would he fit in, and why wouldn't you just give that time to the young guys that are already in your promotion? Like, that's kind of the catch-22. But
yeah,
Danielson has a lot of power in that company. So I think that Ali's a borderline shoo-in for AEW come the end of December.
Yeah, of course, they're all have 90-day no competes. And I always forget if they can refuse those or not.
They can.
I thought they could.
They just don't get paid.
Yeah. So it would probably be smart just to take the free money and take some time off, enjoy yourself a little bit, and then make that jump if you're wanted. But I think Ali is a possibility. He's talented. It's just a question of like, where would he fit in on the roster, like you said. And I don't know, man. It's very, it's tough because, is he really unique enough to deserve a push over, Vikingo if they have him fully? And, Vikingo may not be a good comparison because he may not really, I don't think he's even officially like under an AEW deal. But there's other guys on the roster. Like, are you going to push him over, Commander? He's probably better than Commander, but would you push him over Sammy Guevara? That's a pretty big jump in the pecking order, But, AEW having talent is not a bad thing. So just something to watch more than real concern. Now, you said there were two guys. Who was the other one for you?
Dolph. I already talked about Dolph.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I spaced out.
I thought it would be cool to see a World's Greatest Tag Team mini run where you bring them in, you build them up for a few weeks with a few wins, you give them a TV title shot, and then send them on their way. But apparently, Charlie Haas
even working. Yeah, I thought that he was kind of shot. Ago.
And that's a downer because I think the concept of World's Greatest Tag Team versus FTR would kick ass. But he apparently can't go anymore. So that's kind of out of the question, which, okay, it is what it is. I thought that could have been really cool. But otherwise, what are you going to bring in Rick Boogs? You should bring in Top Dollar and have him do a one-off promo segment with Max Caster and MJF and just be like, all right, you think you could talk? Go. Wait, where's my script? No, just go.
Yeah, I talked about challenge booking before, just like being like, all right, here's a chance for you. Let's see what you can do. I'm not really sure I'd make that investment with him, but at the same time, if If he really thinks he's the best promo, he just needs to prove it at some point. I actually watched the Charlie Haas match late last year. He had a January 2022 match with Josh Alexander in Impact, and let me put it like that. That was under 3.5 stars for me. So for a 2022 Josh Alexander match, that's not great. So
no, not at all. But yeah, that is the news from WWE, and we'll kind of continue along those lines. Right after I recorded with John Carroll last week, news came out about Jade Cargill, where Jade was reportedly going to WWE. It is all but confirmed that she is going. All the rumors and news are pointing that way.
I have to assume it's just
losing to Chris Statler on a rampage points as she's doing business on the way out.
Yeah.
It's good for her.
I have to assume at this point it's just normal wrestling. We don't want to tell you a debut is coming, so it can be a surprise kind of thing. Obviously, it's kind of interesting because I thought that one of the big things for her with going to AEW initially was the lifestyle, specifically like only having to work once or twice a week and, getting to spend time with her family and her kid and everything. Maybe WWE just made the big money contract offer that would, overcome that concern. But I think she's going to do well there. Frankly, I think she might fit better in WWE than AEW, even though AEW's women's division, I think, suffers from some serious depth concerns at this point in time. AEW emphasized the in-ring aspect much more than WWE, and that's always been the weak part of Jade. She looks like a superstar. She carries herself like a superstar. She can do like very short promos with the mouthpiece where she comes across like a superstar. It's just a question of if they're going to treat her like Rhea Ripley, if they're going to treat her like that level of star, or if she's going to get treated more like Raquel Gonzalez, who is pretty similar. I think she's actually better in the ring, than Jade. And she's just kind of there. I know there's been some injury issues with her, but still. But, this isn't really going to hurt AEW, I don't think. I think they'll be fine without her. They were fine without her for that period where she was off TV after losing the TBS belt. And I don't know. Not every move really is going to hurt both companies. In fact, you could argue this one will help both because AEW will no longer be putting in the time to build her, with the constant squash matches and everything. Kind of solves the issue of what do you do with a post-win streak Jade Cargill. Because it feels like the squash thing and the one-sided match thing has kind of been played out, but now we don't even have to worry about that.
Yeah, I think Jade is just tailor-made for WWE. She comes across like a megastar, and that's really important in that company. What's not important in that company is being a fantastic promo or having great matches. It's just not. It's a spectacle first. She is a spectacle. Look at her. Just a phenomenal specimen. That matters in WWE. And she can go over there, have 7-8 minute matches, and it's no problem. The fans are fine with that. In AEW, she's not a great talker. She gets exposed. And you have to be able to put on good to great matches at minimum. She can't do that. So looking at all those little nuances, yeah, it's objectively great that she's going to WWE for both sides. And she did say right before this news came out that there was nowhere she wanted to be but AEW. And you got to wonder if there was that option because Tony Khan's coming from the sports world. And Joe Lanza has confirmed it on audio that there are plenty of options in AEW contracts. Like in the sports world, you have options where, we'll do like a 3-year deal plus a 4th-year team or player option or a mutual option where you both have to opt into it. And that works for the wrestling business too, because you may be like, well, I think this guy will be good for this amount of years, but he could be good for this, so we'll put an option in there. So if he's still good, we'll keep him around. That's relatively normal in the sports world. You see it a lot more in baseball and basketball than you do in like football. But seeing it in wrestling, considering Tony Khan's actual background in both football and soccer, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we've known it's part of that. Like, I think Cody leaving was basically Tony agreeing to not pick up an option and keep him when he didn't want to be there. And I wouldn't be shocked if that was a similar situation here. But yeah, options are part of AEW contracts, and it could very well have been a situation where technically, they could have kept Jade by exercising that option, but they felt that it would be better to let her be happy and leave. So, yeah.
And look, I think AEW will overall be better for not having Jade under contract. And that's not an insult to Jade. It's just sometimes things just don't work out, and it's good to spice up the territory and have new blood. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Addition by subtraction is a total thing in the world of sports and in the world of wrestling. They now have more real estate to push other women. We'll see what they're able to do with that. I talked about this a little bit when I was on the Mr. Warren Hayes show on YouTube, 2 weeks ago now. But I do think that part of the problem with AEW's women's division is identifying the talent to push and acquire. I think they've let some slip through their fingers that they definitely should not have. And I think that's just a continual issue with the company and something to watch going forward. Like, just because you now have more time to devote to other acts doesn't necessarily mean that we'll get the best acts. And I'll come back around to this subject later on when we're discussing the Dynamite Grand Slam show.
There's a lot to talk about with that show. I am really excited to get to that. Whatchamacallit? AEW Dynamite Grand Slam, which reportedly had over 11,000 people in the building and nearly 10,000 sold. So the absolutely disastrous 6,000 number that we were seeing a couple weeks prior, they ended up fixing that pretty quickly with a massive media blitz. So good for them. But we have some other news here. Let's just talk about the Grand Slam attendance, because that's the first thing on the list. It did cross over 10K with reports of 11. This was, I thought it was interesting, the biggest day of show ticket surge in company history per Dave Meltzer. Not bad.
Yeah. They apparently did very good local media with MJF and I think Statlander and Orange Cassidy doing part of it. I think that it played a role in this crossing over. I do think that they finally did heat it up, but it was pretty scary last week when it was like, I forget the exact number, but it was like 6,000 or something. And you're like, ooh, that is a bad number.
Especially because they did over 13,000 the year prior. And look, you're going to have diminishing returns a lot of times at unique venues. And doing the first show ever at Arthur Ashe had cachet to it. And then you were really going to see, okay, what is the show going to do? 13,000, then just under 10,000 paid. Yeah, okay, that's probably the ballpark. And AEW is going to have to figure out if that's worth it moving forward. But it sounds like it's going to be. Reportedly from some of the people we knew that were in attendance, Tony Khan hinted in between the Dynamite and Rampage tapings that it was going to be a pay-per-view moving forward.
Makes sense, since they're definitely moving to 12 a year. So
Grand Slam television ratings were excellent. 984,000 with a 0.36 in the 18 to 49 demo. Both great numbers. I believe that demo number is their highest of the year, and the TV or the total viewers is the highest since February.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Main event with the small overrun peaked at 1.05 million viewers, saving us from watching Young Sheldon for an extra 5 minutes. And this was excellent. This was very, very well done.
Yeah, that's community service right there. Is limiting the young Sheldon in the world. That's a strong number, and definitely should be taken that way by Dynamite, by AEW.
Absolutely. And let's talk about injuries. We mentioned Adam Cole went off the top. You can see him hurt himself because they had the platform gimmick where it was like went right up to the ring, and then he jumps down, and you could visibly see him twist his ankle. And he tried to hide it, but
did not do a good job, frankly. Yeah. Look, he was able to move around pretty well, so respect to him for that. But like, it was obvious immediately that like he had hurt something. But he still was able to get through all his spots, which was pretty impressive. Considering he just twisted his ankle or did something to his knee or who knows what exactly. It is weird we haven't got an exact or any more information on it. So.
Yeah, and I will say Paul Turner looked like he blew out his knee in that match or hurt himself. So that match had 2 injuries, and none of them were from MJF or Samoa Joe, which was honestly a little bit hilarious that the 2 wrestlers were actually wrestling didn't get hurt, but the referee and the second did. But it seems that everybody's going to come out relatively okay. But Jon Moxley audibled to give Phoenix the win. Moxley apparently suffered a mild concussion per Dave Meltzer. And
it was to be perfectly clear, it was very early in the match when Rey Fenix did like a Tope con Hero off the ramp onto Moxley and basically landed full force on his head, which is not good.
No. And Rick Knox did not count like a shoot. He did not count.
No, he did not.
3. And because they had already adjusted the finish and Mox wasn't going to kick out. Well, Phoenix is like, what the fuck? And Mox apparently screamed, fuck you at
did not
Rick
appreciate
Knox.
it.
So then Phoenix gives him another driver and gets the win. I'll be honest. Good on them for changing the finish. Rick Knox screwed this up. This is on Rick Knox.
Yeah.
You have to call that like a shoot.
Well, it's really a question of what AEW's company policy is, if you're supposed to call it as a shoot or not, because if I put myself in Knox's shoes, I could easily envision like knowing that the storyline is that Mox is going to have a long title run and was supposed to go over in this match, and then all of a sudden he's getting pinned and not kicking out, and you're like, what the hell? So maybe Mox, he wasn't sure if he should go with what Mox said or with what the plan was ahead of time. But yeah, I thought I had several kind of thoughts about this match. First of all, people really freaked out over the Phoenix drivers at the end of the match, where they're like, "Oh my God, this is what concussed Jon Moxley." There was no sign of that, and Meltzer said that he has heard that neither affected him. They were just normal moves that he took all right. So there's some concern trolling there. But on the other hand, like, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't stop the match early before the commercial break, because Moxley looked bad after that, for like several minutes after that initial dive onto him. He obviously was not moving like he normally did, or if you just watch his work, like it's slow-mo Moxley. He was really struggling to get through the match at that point in time, and I'm shocked that like Rick Knox didn't stop it and check on him or anything. And frankly, I think in hindsight, hindsight is 2020 and everything, that maybe they should have just stopped the match after, like a minute after that dive, just to like, be like he can't continue, because he was obviously dazed, and dazed is kind of a nice way to say concussed a lot of the times. So
in 1998's NFL, he would have had a full-blown concussion and been questionable to return and came back in anyways.
Yeah. Or the Miami Dolphins last year.
Oh, the Dolphins. Yep. But thankfully, when I heard Moxley got hurt and then I saw it, I'm like, fuck, did he like break his neck? No.
Yeah, that was a concern I had.
Well, concussions are bad, but compared to a broken neck, concussions are great.
Not always, but the reporting, the fact he was able to recover enough to like work pretty much normally, I took that as a good sign in terms of it not being a major concussion. in live time. But yeah, it's still not great. Should not have continued the match, in my opinion.
Agreed. Let's continue on with some news, and then we have a lot to talk about with Dynamite here. House of Wrestling's Nick Hausman reported CM Punk is not going to sue AEW. Considering how much information that Hausman has gotten from CM Punk, I would expect that to be the case. I don't really know what grounds he would have to sue AEW over anyways, because they, like, a panel of lawyers said, no, you're going to fire him with cause and you're good. I don't think that that's going to be overturned. I really don't.
Remember that you can sue anyone for anything in the United States. Doesn't mean you're going to succeed, and doesn't mean it's not going to be a waste of your money, and you might be found to be liable for the other party's legal fees. But you could have made that decision. Frankly, it sounds like he made the correct business decision for himself. I don't know. Like you said, the idea that this could be some kind of improper termination of his contract seems very unlikely to me as both a wrestling fan and an occasional, legal news reader person. It just doesn't follow. It makes no sense to me under how he could claim that he was wronged when, there's apparently footage of him starting this fight backstage from all angles, essentially. And, there's also reports that he signed paperwork upon his return that was like, hey, if I get in another fight, I can be fired. Yeah. Put two and two together. I don't know how you could say, but Jack Perry said a thing about me into the camera, and made me upset. And so I should be able to keep my job.
It's interesting. Jack Perry, I don't know if he's suspended. He's
hasn't
shown up. Okay.
And Tony Khan was asked about him. I read in the Observer. I can't recall what show Tony Khan was on, but he was on there, and they asked about him. He's like, I can't answer that, or I'm not going to answer that, one or the other. So he's still off in the nowhere space, the Tony Khan will not talk about him space. So I was thinking about that some, and frankly, I don't know why you would punish Jack Perry in that situation. Like, wrestlers doing little shoot comments as asides is a normal part of the business. And even if you're like, well, that upset CM Punk, who's one of our top guys, and that's bad. Like, I think, there's much more of an onus on CM Punk to not fight everyone all the time than there is on Jack Perry to not make a side jab at a guy. I'm not saying that what Jack Perry was productive or good, but I certainly wouldn't fire him over that instant. And I wouldn't de-push him or anything. So I don't know. It's just very odd. I suppose it's possible that they had planned on him being out after that match with Hook anyway. And so they just kind of put him on ice all the same. But yeah, it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, and I'd mention it. Let's continue with the news. QT Marshall has signed a new deal through the end of the year. They're working on a new longer-term deal. Look, at the end of the day, if you don't like QT on TV, that's fine, but he does a lot of stuff with talent development and the Nightmare Factory. And I believe the Nightmare Factory is still hooked up with AEW as far as a developmental center and that kind of thing. So, and QT is obviously the head trainer there. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of him on TV, but he helps out a lot backstage. So this was inevitable.
Yeah, it's not a surprise he was renewed. I think he does a lot of stuff backstage. I hope I never see QTV ever again. If that gimmick just fell into the ocean, I wouldn't mind. Yeah. But he's not a bad worker. That's the thing with QT is he's not a bad worker. He's cut a decent promo. It's just that this is not a good gimmick in my opinion.
Yeah. That when he does the Dadcore Will Ospreay spots is just what gets me.
I actually like those. We get kind of chunky QT Marshall doing 450s. As a fat athlete enthusiast, that's good. people are like, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm like, no, you should be doing it more.
Yes, he should absolutely be doing it more.
Give me more of that Khalid El-Amin, bullshit.
Oh, hey, Minnesota legend Khalid El-Amin.
That's right.
Yep, Minneapolis North High School, baby. All right. Jake Hager officially retires from MMA. I think he has an undefeated record. What is he, like 3 or 4-0?
It might be a couple more than that. I can double check, but he is undefeated. And I'm not an MMA guy. I flirted with it for a little bit, and then it was kind of dumb. And I got tired of it. He is officially 3 wins, 0 losses, and 1 no contest because he kept accidentally hitting Anthony Garrett in the groin. Also notable is that he fought 4 guys on Bellator shows, and none of them have Wikipedia pages. So I just think he kind of had himself a steady diet of cans. And
well, it also doesn't help that Bellator is going out of business.
Yeah, that doesn't help either. No, so
yeah. So good for Jake Hager having an undefeated MMA record. Wheeler Yuta pulled from an indie show last Saturday due to an injury. He seemed okay when we saw him on TV. He took a knee from Claudio Castagnoli in the lead up to that match, which I thought was a really cool way to begin Dynamite, where they had Claudio in his locker room. They brought him out, and then they had Eddie in the back, and then going up through Gorilla. I thought those were real. It was just
those were cool shots.
Nice.
Yeah, I saw. I think maybe it's Garrett Kennedy make a comment recently that was like, "Hey, when one of the best things early TNA did was in the tunnels they'd shoot people from behind so they look bigger than life."
Oh, that was a cool shot.
And I recently saw the little video that TNA or Impact did for their 1000th episode of Impact, and it featured a shot of Jeff Jarrett walking in the ring from behind, and I'm like, yeah, they need to do this. It's awesome.
Speaking of Impact 1000 last night, they had the Fox box back for a match.
Yeah, they did. I saw that.
I loved it. Some of my favorite days as a wrestling fan were watching TNA back in the peak days of Fox Sports Net, and it was dope. But anyways, let's continue on. We have one.
I'm gonna toss something in here real quick, just because I've binged. I'm trying to keep up on Impact this year, along with a bunch of other promotions. But I gotta say, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley are having really nice years, and Mike Bailey is, if he's not on people's lists for best in ring, most outstanding in Observer parlance, you should probably double check that, because between the best of the Super Junior and what he's doing regularly on Impact and on these indie shows, which I've only seen a couple of, but still, he doesn't take nights off. If you were to tell me you put him 3rd or 5th or whatever on your most outstanding list, I think that'd be well observed.
Yeah. It's hard for me to disagree with you there, Fred. It's
just getting my shit in.
Really? Hey, do not blame.
Call me Brian Cage.
All right, Brian Cage. Let's talk about how you were not on this show, but you were on. Page 10-9. Let's start off with it, because the first match, Eddie Kingston versus Claudio Castagnoli, title for title, the NJPW Strong Openweight title and the Ring of Honor World Championship on the line. And Claudio comes out dressed like Misawa, and Eddie obviously is always rocking the Toshiaki Kawada colors. This was awesome. And they really built up Eddie's win, where he won with the Northern Lights bomb. No, he won with the power bomb, didn't he?
The Kawada power bomb, yes.
Yeah, which I thought was dope as hell, because he had mentioned to Kawada that he would do the power bomb for him, even though his power bomb form sucks, and he got the win with it. That
says he hates doing it, but still, I didn't think it looked bad.
It was fine. He didn't get him up high enough, but it looked powerful. It looked really good. So it's hard to, and my dogs all of a sudden are quiet, and I'm really worried.
That's scary. Yeah. It's concerning that
That's
you've had
very-
for the 38 minutes we've been recording plus the pre-show, just the tap dancing of dog toenails everywhere, and now it's just deadly quiet in your house apparently.
Yeah. And I can't see them either, but
It's spooky season.
they might both be laying down because they're both tired. But usually they come do it by me, so I'm very, very concerned. But it was
check on them.
No, I'll check on him in a minute. But this match was excellent.
Oh yeah, this ruled.
Yeah, I gave it 4.25 plus. I thought this was great. Kingston getting uppercutted and stuff, and then like almost like no selling it like Hogan, and then getting the chance from the crowd, and he kept doing the spinning back fist, and these guys just went to war, and I thought it was perfect. Claudio looks at Wheeler's like, that was 2, and Wheeler's like, nope. He picks up the belt, shakes Eddie's hand, and gives it to him, and Eddie shakes it begrudgingly.
Yeah,
because he still hates Claudio, but he respects the wrestler. And I thought it was just a great way to culminate this story. Eddie gets the big win. He wins his first true world title in front of his home crowd. Great, great, great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good match and great storytelling and fantastic. I loved it. Of course, I'm an Eddie mark, so I 100% own up to that. That he rules. He's just he's like Terry Funk in that he just genuinely feels like it's real. Like it feels much more real than other guys. And it's great promo, and I just love Eddie Kingston. And this was a great example of like why Eddie Kingston is good. And yeah, I went 4.5 flat on this because I don't do the plus minus thing. And I just hope, this leads to a good Ring of Honor World Championship run. Honestly, it doesn't feel like he's the Ring of Honor champ to me. He just, I don't know. Like, for some reason, I was just saying, Tyler, I mentally do not identify him as the Ring of Honor World Champion, Eddie Kingston, for some reason. Like, although I know that match was for it. You're muted.
How dare you?
I know, right? But it just feels like he's still like the New Japan openweight guy. And even though the Ring of Honor one is supposedly more important. Like, I don't know why my brain just rejects that. But it's awesome, and I'm really excited to see what they do with that. Maybe they'll actually do a storyline on Honor Club or something. I can only hope.
Yeah, it's weird if like Eddie is kind of that just like, I don't know what the word is, like beaten down, abused babyface, where nothing just ever goes right for him.
Yeah.
And now something's gone right for him.
Yeah, it's good.
Twice. And it's good, but
I don't know that they need to give him a long run with it. You could just outright McFoley this, where he had his, what were they, 2 world title wins in WWF and held him for less than a month combined.
Mark Briscoe.
Yeah.
Final battle.
Yeah. I think that would be a good story right there. But yeah, I loved it. Next up on the show. Okay, we got to talk about this and your thoughts on it. Because I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. We had the pre-tape of Roddy in a bed at the hospital with the Kingdom. And
Roddy rules, man. This was overall stupid.
Oh yeah,
Roderick Strong in this bit is great.
I think Matt Taven's good in this too, and Mike Bennett. I think they're all good in this very stupid storyline. Which I think my biggest problem with it is it involves the World Championship. Like if it was just, like not mid card, but away from the world title, this would be probably much more palatable to me. But the fact that we still have, the world title embroiled in all this, it doesn't feel very AEW to me. But I will say I was rather entertained by the segment. We had Matt Taven reading a card somebody wrote and sent to the hospital where Roderick Strong is, even though the hospital is in a different city than they were last week. And saying that person hoped to be as next strong as him one day. And then Adam Cole comes in and Roddy just starts screaming, "Adam, where are you?" And Adam walks in and looks at him and says, "Open your eyes, I'm right here." Very goofy. Roddy dramatically raising up in his bed to tell him just go, and then dramatically lowering himself again. the bits are good. If it was a little lower on the card, I would probably enjoy this a lot more. This is not what AEW is to me, I guess, but it's I don't know. It's a weird situation for me. This very much depends on just how much you like to be sports entertained. I think your feelings on this whole storyline and everything, but I thought this was a well done segment.
I think it was a well done segment. It's stupid, but stupid doesn't mean bad. Like, they don't have to correlate. And I think everybody performed their parts very well. And Roderick Strong with the neck brace is one of my favorite gimmicks right now in wrestling because it's so incredibly dumb. And it's intentionally hokey.
Yes, it is. It is. They're in on the joke. They're aware of what they're doing, and that's good. But last Dynamite, where he has the match with Joe, and he's just walking around, and Matt Taven offers him the neck brace back, and Roddy, waves him off, and then you see Adam Cole come out, and Roderick drops like he was shot by a sniper, grabbing his neck and screaming Adam's name. It was very good. I was sports entertained by that.
Yes. Speaking of sports entertained, Chris Jericho versus Sammy Guevara. And this was a match where the dogs have now come inside. They went outside, apparently. Okay. And they are now playing with a Benny bone. They love their bones. And now Odie's humping. Great. Hey, live dog commentary. You're only going to get that on the Good, the Bad,
we got Excalibur Jones over here, but I digress.
Yeah. Odie has no balls. He got neutered, and he's still humping. It's hilarious. I guess it doesn't go away. But you have Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara. This match was good. I give it 4 stars. I think the finish to me was great. I loved it. Sammy Guevara hits the GTH, and he's like, no, I need to put him away. And he does. He goes to the shooting star press, and Jericho turns it into a code breaker. 1, 2, 3. And then Sammy kicks Jericho on the balls and joins Don Callis, which we will find out more about on Friday. That was an interesting twist that I did not necessarily expect. I really like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I actually thought, I wondered if Guevara would just reform some version of the Jericho Appreciation Society, but it makes sense it's with Callis. But I was predicting, before the match started that we would see a Guevara heel turn here. Yeah, I liked this match. I thought it was solid. The worst part of it was there was a pretty bad mistiming where Guevara was basically supposed to super kick a springboarding Jericho, but their timing was way off, and Jericho still sold it even though it was an obvious miss on TV. But I still thought this was very well worked. I went 4 flat on it. The callback to the Shawn Michaels Chris Jericho WrestleMania match at 19 with the post match was really good. And was kind of obvious as soon as commentary started talking about how Guevara was wearing gear, paying tribute to that match. It was kind of in the back of my head the entire time. And I'm looking forward to where this goes. The Daniel Garcia thing that they played up later after an MJF and Adam Cole sketch or segment was also interesting. And I hope to God this is finally them pulling the trigger on Daniel Garcia, because dude is fantastic. He's been ready for a push for a while now, and I thought when they teased him leaving JAS last year that was going to be it, and he was going to get rocketed up the card. Then they didn't do it. So hopefully we get some good stuff from Daniel out of this, and maybe an elevation to an actual high up on the card guy, which he deserves.
Oh, I hope this comes with a really big push for Daniel Garcia. My favorite part about this was Guevara is finally a full-fledged heel again. Look, you tried making him a baby face. He's got the most punchable face in the history of professional wrestling. He's a natural heel. And All Access was made essentially to get him over as a potential baby face. Look, he's just not. And that's okay. Find out new ways to make him hateable. And it's really not that hard with Sammy Guevara. He's just naturally hateable as a character. And now he's with Don Callis, who's literally the most hated man in American wrestling. I think this could be really, really good.
Yeah, I feel like Callis has lost a little heat, unfortunately, because instead of being like so loud you can't hear his promos from a couple weeks before the Omega match, now we're just at normal overheel levels. How dare he? As I get a look at, I don't know which dog that is, but Tyler's got a pug with him now.
It's Eclair. Hey, Frenchie.
Sorry, Frenchie. I don't
Frenchies
know.
have ears up. Pugs have ears drooping down.
Gotcha. Okay. So not members of the Bullet Club Gold. Got it. Yeah. But yeah, I Daniel Garcia needs a big push, basically. We did miss a segment where Christian challenged Darby to a triangle match for the TNT Championship against him and Luchasaurus. I'm wondering if this is going to have Christian's crew Luchasaurus out the title, so he actually has it. It just kind of feels like the natural booking. And then we had a short segment where MJF and Cole arrive, and then Cole gets a phone call from Roderick Strong, tells MJF he has to go to the hospital to see him, and screams into the phone, "Roddy, you're not going to die." While MJF cuts a promo on Joe. Entertaining stuff. Ray Phoenix and John Moxley. Look, we talked about the injury and the couple of Phoenix drivers at the end, and Rick Knox botching the pin. I still thought this was a good match, considering all the things going against it. But once Mox kind of woke up, for lack of a better term, once he started moving at like almost a normal speed, like I thought this was pretty well worked. I went 3.5 on it. Glad that it is apparently just a minor concussion, but yeah, we have what I have to assume is an unplanned AEW International Championship change to Ray Phoenix.
And you know what?
He's long deserved some kind of gold. So I hope maybe we get an actual push of him rather than maybe just holding it for a couple weeks until Mox is ready. But
the best part is this works within the context of what the story is with Death Triangle, Best Friends, and Blackpool Combat Club. So the title change, even though it was changed in the ring and it wasn't necessarily what they wanted to happen with the match, it works. And I think that rocks because now you can go with the story and Phoenix finally gets the win. What really ended up working well is the graphic going into the show was Phoenix's trying to gain his third different AEW title, which I think now he's the second person in AEW to have held 3 different titles. The other one being Kenny Omega, because Omega held the world, the trios, and the tag. Yeah. And Phoenix has held the tag, the trios, and the international.
I think that's it. Yeah.
That's a big get for him.
Yeah.
That Moxley's never held the tag or the trios, but he's held the international and the heavyweight. Jericho's only ever held the heavyweight, if you can believe that. He hasn't held the title since he dropped the heavyweight belt to John Moxley at Revolution.
But I heard that he just beats everyone and buries all the young talent.
Yeah, anybody who says that can be told to shut the fuck up. They don't know what they're talking about. There's a reason why Jericho's still on television. He's Chris Jericho. He's still great.
Oh, and he jobs constantly is the thing. Like he loses.
He should lose less.
I don't know, man. I think you could definitely heat him up more at points, but like I think he's also doing really good work right now, helping elevate guys. And Guevara is just the latest example of that, I think.
Yeah, and I thought this was a very well done story from start to finish. This was great. Like,
had a short little good promo from Samoa Joe, hype video for Rampage.
God, Samoa Joe rules.
Joe
He's
rules.
So great.
Honestly,
they should have strapped him up.
They weren't going to, but man, Joe rules. So I would not have complained. Then we had ourselves a women's match between Saraya and Toni Storm for the World Women's Championship, and I gotta ask you about this Toni Storm gimmick. So We had Toni Storm as like a really over babyface champion last year.
Yep.
And then they decide that they want to turn her heel to kind of be the workhorse of the Outcasts group, right? With Ruby and Saraya. Which I still feel was kind of poorly timed because she was still over as a face. But, you know, they'd also had already, I think, moved on to a different face champion at that point in time. So I got it. And now we're turning her back babyface, which, again, it feels like the right time, though. It feels like, yeah, I think the Outcast storyline has really floundered. It has not done what they probably wanted it to. But, okay, so you want to turn Toni Storm babyface off it. That makes sense. This character that she's doing, I've enjoyed the kind of aspects of it that are, you know, like Nesma Dormand from Sunset Boulevard, or just the stereotypical, you know, like 50s-ish starlet actress, right? Some of the stuff in the promos have been good. And then I figured that, okay, so when she actually works the match, they'll lower that a little bit, right? They'll just kind of have her be, you know, still wrestling like Toni Storm. But that was not the case. She went full gimmick, you know, where she was just doing all the shtick. And I don't want to see that with Toni Storm. If it was... if Ruby Soho was doing this, it would be better, I think, because Ruby Soho is not a top tier women's worker in the U.S.
No,
Toni Storm is, though, and for her to like be doing all this shtick in her match, it's getting in the way of her having a great match, and that's what I want to see her do.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, this is too much sports entertainment here. And this kind of, you know, that was a bummer to me. Now, I did think the match was solid. I went 2 3/4 on it. I still do not know what you really do with Saraya long term, because I don't feel like she's really excelling in any way in AEW right now. And to have her as your women's world champ, despite that, I think kind of hurts the division as a whole. Because I don't think she's definitely not a great worker at this point in time. I don't think she's cutting. Her promos have been decent, but not great. You know, like they're decent and good, but not like a top of the division level worker. And she just doesn't feel like a big star, despite her previously being a massive star in WWE before her neck imploded. She just feels like a, you know, decently over worker, I guess, like a mid carder. And if there's any hope for her to really elevate the division, I don't think it's going to happen. She kind of flopped as a face, and now she's just fine as a heel. Yeah.
I wonder if they're waiting for Hayter to come back, and this is just something to do in the meantime.
Yeah. You know, if that's you can't just do that though, especially when Hayter has this you know, has this long-term injury. Like, you've got to be able to adapt. You can't just let it coast. But, you know, I do think this is a long-term issue with AEW's women's division, is that they kind of have been coasting for quite a while now, maybe this entire year. And it does not feel like it's being very very creatively successful. Yeah, so that's my take.
Creatively successful, I think, is a really good way to phrase it out, Fred. And I'm intrigued to see kind of where this ends up going. But the match itself, excuse me, pretty shtick heavy. I'm going to keep that in there just because I think it's funny.
Oh, God.
I thought it was pretty good for being shtick heavy.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a failure or anything. It wasn't like a great success at the same time. It was all right.
Yeah, it was objectively fine. Didn't really have a lot of great work in it. It had some good work. Saraya had her working boots on. There were no botches.
Yeah,
but it
was
rough. 3 1/4, 3.5. Like, it was a solid match. I really had no complaints other than it was very shtick heavy, but for what they did, it was very good.
Yeah.
And if you can get that out of Saraya consistently, I think I still wouldn't have her as my world champion, but I think it's fine. It's fine.
I'm not like bothered by it by any, grand level. It's just, not superstar level stuff. And I would expect more at the top of the women's division from AEW.
I love how you just poured that drink, Fred, and it sounded like you were taking a piss.
Hey, look, Porque no Lustos. And then we had the main event, which was, of course, the MJF and Samoa Joe. We did a little Bret Hart tribute video, which is really a reference to Mean Joe Green, his infamous Coke commercial from back in the 70s, I think it was, maybe the early 80s.
70s.
And MJF tells a kid that he's adopted.
That got me.
It was pretty funny. It was a good bit. And then they, I thought what we basically got here was a work rate Hulk Hogan defending against the Monster Heel title match from back in the 80s. I thought it was structured very similar to that.
Great way to put it.
Yeah, I like it. It's except without just Hogan, not trying. Well, trying, but not working hard, I guess. I don't know how to really properly put that. Not exactly Mr. Work Rate, Hulk Hogan was. But I thought this was a really good match. Look, the level of sports entertainment in the MJF storylines are not for everyone. And I get that. I 100% do. I have complained about parts of it at points in time, especially those pre-tapes leading up to the Adam Cole match. But I thought this match was worked very well. It didn't go too hard into the shtick. We never got like a real "why am I so violent" situation. We had his best friend Adam Cole come out, try to destroy his leg, and offer support and hype him up to escape the sleeper hold. And I liked this match a lot. I thought Joe looked awesome in it. This may have been Joe's best performance in AEW, and considering what he's done, that's saying something. MJF did a good job. And they worked in the shtick some. He did some Hogan offense and he did like the kangaroo kick and all that stuff, but it was not too much shtick. And I think that's important, and that's why it worked for me. And I went 4.25 stars on this. I thought it was a really good match, and a nice cap to the show. And then afterwards, of course, the finish we should go over, which is MJF kept going for a sleeper because he promised he would choke out Joe. And Joe
called up his friend Dick Togo.
Yeah, Joe early in the match kept just like easily tossing him off whenever he went for it. And then at some point, MJF pulls a chain out of a turnbuckle, I think it was, or it might have been ripping off a tag rope, but I thought it was a chain.
It looked like a groat wire.
Yeah, and he does the old Ring of Honor CM Punk Jimmy Ray finish, where he locks on a sleeper hold, but uses that to disguise the fact he's actually choking out Joe with the chain. The ref doesn't see it, calls for the stoppage. MJF wins. One note I really didn't care much for was Samoa Joe shaking MJF's hand afterwards. I figure my thought is, if you're ever a wrestler of any kind and you got screwed out of a match because the other guy cheated, even if that guy's a face, you shouldn't shake his hand. That's just my hang up there.
So I'll counter this. I think that's going somewhere.
Maybe.
I think Joe is luring MJF into a false sense of security with the handshake, and that's going somewhere. Because otherwise, I agree. And
I just assume that their feud's over.
One of the reasons why I think that is it's Samoa Joe. Why the hell would he, as the heel, do that? Because everything you're saying makes complete sense. I think there's something more to it, and we're gonna get it down the line. That's the only thing I can think of. Because otherwise, Samoa Joe doing that, knowing he got screwed and shaking his hand, unless it's he expected that from MJF and knew that MJF.
Yeah, if it's like
actually do it.
if it's like a cheater recognizing cheater kind of thing, then if he tells that story in a promo, I'm okay with it. It's not like the biggest example of this I will always point to until I die or just completely lose my mind and get like super dementia. Is the Sting Triple H WrestleMania match where Sting gets screwed out of the match and then he shakes Hunter's hand, and it's just like, why are we doing any of this, but especially the handshake? It didn't feel like that at all to me, but it's just a minor point with me is like, if you get screwed out of a match, you shouldn't turn around and handshake with the guy that screwed you out of the match. But
yeah, we all know what the Sting handshake was. We all know. It was WWE over WCW.
Because we can't let that go. 15 years later, or however long it was.
Not at all. That's Grand Slam. Great show. Great show.
It was. I liked it overall. Thought it was like a 8 out of 10 show. Some really good matches. Nothing that was a real like match of the year contender, but I would recommend practically everything except for the women's match off of this. And I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I would tell everybody to watch the whole show. Watch it all.
Yeah. I there's far worse things you can do with your time than watch Saraya and Tony Storm. It was not that bad. It wasn't bad at all. It was pretty decent. So
yeah, exactly. Fred, there's something that we've been meaning to talk about on this show for a while since it came out. We haven't had an opportunity, but we've only been recording for an hour and 5 minutes. I think today's the day.
Oh yes, finally. I get it again, Brian Cage it, baby. Yeah, let's talk about it. Set it up, buddy.
So the VOW 30 under 30. We were 2 of, I believe, 23 participants among Voice of Wrestling contributors. And the goal is, who are your 30 best wrestlers under 30? And there were no guardrails other than they had to be under the age of 30. And they had to be an active professional wrestler. That was it. You could frame it as who has the most potential, who's the best right now, a combination of both. There were no guidelines other than that. And I think that's the best way to create those lists, because you just want genuine reactions and opinions of people in the wrestling space. And this came from ESPN doing their 30 under 30 list, which was an absolute abomination of professional wrestling. Having like Liv Morgan in the top 10. Come on. You're not fooling anybody. No, absolutely not. And we decided that we wanted to do a comprehensive, honest look at all the young people in professional wrestling and see who we believe is at the top. And I think overall, we did a very good job of it. There were some that were like, okay, is this right? Is this wrong? You can have debates about some of these guys and girls, but at the end of the day, I thought the list was very good.
Yeah, of course I have the correct list on my computer because it's my ballot I sent in. But
eat shit.
But yeah, no, honestly, I love the idea of it. Griffin Peltier put it together, really, and he did a fantastic job with it. And I had a ton of fun voting in this. And you want to go through our lists, our individual ballots, and
oh shoot, do I have my ballot still? Oh, I put it in the Discord. I can go find it.
Okay, sure.
You go ahead.
I'll just go over it. The top 10 on the final list was number 10, Shota Umino, number 9, Shun Skywalker, number 8, Rhea Ripley, number 7, Jamie Hayter, number 6, Hijo de Vikingo, number 5, Julia, number 4, Kaito Kiyomiya, number 3, Yota Tsuji, number 2, Konosuke Takeshita, and of course, number 1, MJF. And I have to think MJF will be on the top of the list every year until he's no longer under 30.
I had all of those in my top 15, so I am the most right. I think Shun Skywalker was my 15. So I'll go through my top 10 first.
Okay.
So I have to figure out where 10 is, so I can start there. Okay. Sorry, counting is hard.
It is hard.
3, 4, 5, 6,
1,
7, 8,
2,
9. Okay.
3.
All right. My number 10. Rhea Ripley. 9, Tony
Okay.
Storm. 8, Dragon Lee, which, yes, he's under 30. 7, Kaito Kiyomiya. 6, Daniel Garcia. 5, Shota Umino. 4, Julia. 3, Kinosuke Takeshita. 2, El Hijo del Vikingo. And number 1, MJF. And this was a tough one for me because Utami Hayashishita at 11, and I really wanted to put her over Ripley because I just wonder what actual ceiling Rhea has in WWE versus what she could have elsewhere. And I don't think she's leaving. Like, that was my big trepidation with her. And like, I had Tyler Bate at 12. If Bate was in any other company, he's a top 3 easy. But he's retired at like 26 years old.
Yeah, I did a vote for Tyler Bate just because he's not doing anything and hasn't done anything for a long time. If he was fully active, like, you know, like really working regularly and getting a push, that'd be a different situation. But he's just off in nowhere land with, you know, NXT right now. My top 10, and this was tough because I had like Yota Tsuji at 12 and Madoka Kikuchi at 13 and Kyle Fletcher at 11. I love all these guys, but I couldn't get them in the top 10. I have the new Mascara Dorada at 10. At that point, it was kind of a reputation vote, but it's held up after all the matches I've watched of his as either Panterita Del Ring or Mascara Dorada. I've been watching a lot of CMLL recently, and he's fantastic. Number 9 is Shun Skywalker. He's the best guy in Dragon Gate today, and easily the most complete worker there. Number 8, Daniel Garcia. Again, I think he's a fantastic worker, very charismatic, and just needs a proper push. Number 7, I was surprised that this person did not make the official top 30, but Starlight Kid. I think she's just fantastic. Probably the second most impressive worker in Stardom from what I've seen. Just a lot of charisma, and she's doing really well as a heel now.
I think that's just a lack of exposure to Joshi.
I guess.
I'll be honest, I haven't really watched much of her at all. She didn't make my list.
Yeah, I mean, she's great. I love her. Number 6, Rhea Ripley. Number 5, Tony Storm. Number 4, Hijo del Vikingo. Number 3, Takeshita. Number 2, Julia. Number 1, MJF. I had Jamie Hayter down in 19th. I actually prefer Tony Storm to Jamie Hayter personally. I just think that Storm's a more complete worker. I especially felt that way before we went full gimmick in this past match, but you know, that's one match. I thought it was just a lot of fun to do this. Very tough to figure out who I was and wasn't voting for. Like Tyler Bate was my first cut. I left out like Funky Jackie Kamei, Hook, Nick Wayne, Barbaro Cavernario, who yes is still under 30. Vinny, I just don't see enough of her stuff, sadly. Riho, Dante Martin, Suzu Suzuki. There's a lot of talent under 30 right now, and I couldn't find a spot for Ilya Dragunov. I just think that he's a great worker, but I feel like that's not. This list to me really should have focused on like charisma and star power. And I think he's kind of short in both of those. I think he'll really flounder in WWE once he stops getting the super NXT worker push. Because if he goes into Vince's hands, it's not going to go well for him. I'm pretty sure.
I had Ilya at 18th just because his work rate is so tremendous.
No, he does have great matches.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a ceiling, but it would be like a Tomohiro Ishii level ceiling where he's going to go in and have great matches with literally everybody, but you're never going to want to crown him as the guy.
And another problem I have with voting for him, just personally, is that he does, at least when I voted, his pace has picked up. But at that point in time, he was not working high-level matches very often. Like, he'd have like 3 a year, it felt like. that pace has picked up since we voted on this a month ago, I think. But at that point in time, I was like, yeah, he's a great worker, but I can't say that he's going to be any different than Tyler Bate. And there's a lot of great workers on this list. I mean, my bottom 10 were Kaito Kiyomiya, Dragon Lee, Bandito, Tommy Hayashishida, Wheeler Yuta, Leo Rush, Dragon Dia, Jack Perry, Maki Ito, and Willow Nightingale. I mean, I just didn't see an easy spot to slot either Ilya or Tyler Bate in there, or Pete Dunne, for that matter.
Yeah, it was really hard for me at the end of this list. Like my bottom 5 were at Francesco Akira at 30, Logan Paul at 29. Logan Paul's great, and I wish he did this full time. I really did.
That's a major reason I didn't vote for him. Is like I don't know that he's actually going to be wrestling next year. I think that matters.
Mascara Dorada at 28, Nick Wayne at 27, and
I thought about him.
I'm a big Atlantis Jr. fan, and I have him at 26.
Yeah, I had not considered him because at that point in time I was well behind on CMLL. Now I would definitely consider him. I don't know if he'd make my top 30, but that's not so much on him, just the other talent that's on this list.
And that's the problem. I think like around 60 wrestlers were included on ballots, something like that. I'd have to double check the how many, but yeah, there was a lot.
Yeah, this was really hard to do. And if you like making, if you like this kind of thing, I do suggest that you sit down at home and just take some time to try to come up with your own list. I saw some people complain about the list because it did include 15 people from their favorite promotion. But if you're really doing this, you should, be looking at a bunch of different promotions and, cast a wide net. You should give consideration. And if you just look at the also receiving votes, and it was way more than 60, 22. On air counting is always fun. More than 50, I can say that much right now. There's just so much young talent out there right now, and it's really awesome to be able to watch them all. There was a total of 108 people that received at least one vote on this list.
Yeah, that tells you how much young talent there is in the world today.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it does. And I mean, just the also receiving votes section is fantastic. I mean, Azumi's on there, Ace Austin, Carmelo Hayes, Dante Martin, all these people I'm naming, if they made the top 30, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Hook. I'll tell you, if Hook starts wrestling regularly on TV in actual matches, I don't know how you could really keep him off your list next year, but it's a crowded field. Kota Minoura, Lee Moriarty, Mal, Chris Statlander, all kinds of great workers on these lists.
Oh yeah, it's truly incredible how much talent there is in the world of professional wrestling right now.
Yeah, and it's very encouraging too. It's cool. It's awesome. Yay, pro wrestling.
Yay, pro wrestling. Big fan. Absolute big fan. Fred, do you have anything else here today?
Not really. I was just glad to be able to make it back to the show. I wasn't able to listen to the whole episode, but I thought John Carroll did a fantastic job last week. And you guys had a very interesting conversation from what I was able to hear, because this has been a crazy couple weeks for me. But, about the status of AEW's business and everything. And I really enjoyed what I was able to listen to.
Yeah. John, really intelligent person. Glad he was able to fill in for you while you were taking care of some family business. But that is the show here today. You can follow us on Twitter at GoodBadHungee. You can follow me on Twitter at TheRealForno. You can follow Fred on other social media platforms
Blue Sky
aren't nearly as popular as Twitter or X.
Yes. Give it time, man. Once the news came out that Elon was like, I'm going to charge people to use Twitter, Blue Sky had their biggest day ever in terms of signups. So,
and apparently it was misconstrued because they're just going to offer a lower tier Twitter Blue.
All right, we'll see about that. I don't trust this guy.
I don't either, but whatever.
Anyways,
if you like the show, please like, comment, subscribe, give all the 5-star reviews, because just like Dave Meltzer, we love 5 stars. And if you're listening on the Voice of Wrestling podcast feed, please consider listening and subscribing to our solo feed to help us continue to grow the channel in the country of Turkey and the rest of the Mediterranean and worldwide.
We hit number 40 in Malaysia a couple days ago.
All right.
As far as wrestling podcasts.
Thank you, Malaysia. We love you. And with that in mind, my dogs, who are now quiet, say thank you for dealing with their bullshit. And we will see you next week.
Take care, everyone.
Hi, my name is Tyler Fornes, and I am the co-host of The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Every week, my co-host Fred Moreland and I discuss all the happenings of All Elite Wrestling and everything going on in the universe of Tony Khan. We talk about Dynamite, we talk about Rampage, and we will talk about Collision when the time comes as well, along with all the appearances outside of AEW from all the best talents in All Elite Wrestling. This is one of the more cohesive wrestling companies in the entire world, and we discuss every intricacy about it, including the unique booking of Tony Khan that is both a huge positive and a major detriment. Check us out every single Thursday here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.